what are the major benefits of his? We forget sometimes exactly what he brings to the table as a player. So, what's the appeal for you when you look at PJ Washington and what he's going to bring to Charlotte as a starting four, being only about 25 years old?
Yeah, I mean, I think versatility really is the first thing that comes to mind when you think about PJ Washington, and that applies on both sides of the ball. You know, like you're saying, offensively, he can obviously shoot the ball. He's about a career 37% 3-point shooter. That might not even do his shooting ability justice. He's probably even a little better than that. He can score in the post a little bit. We saw last year he was kind of empowered to run more pick and roll, to get more post ups, to create more off the dribble, to play make a little more. So just a very versatile player offensively. And then defensively, you know, he can switch.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know if he's like elite switchable, but he's very switchable. He can guard pretty much every position depending on the matchup off a switch. I mean, I would say he's like loosely in the PJ Tucker, Grant Williams mold. I would almost say like, you know, if you look at what Aaron Gordon did for the Nuggets, like if you could picture Aaron Gordon with like less athleticism and a little more shooting, like he could be something along those lines. And like, so I think he's a guy that could really shine on a good team. And unfortunately, Charlotte has not really been that and is probably not going to be that next season. But if they do, you know, ascend over the next few years and they become a playoff team, I think he could really shine with his skill set. Like, as good as he was last year, I think he'd be even more better and more valuable and more recognized for his ability if he was on a good team. Just a quality player. He's the type of player that every team needs. And that just goes back to like, it is a little surprising that some team didn't just offer him 18 to 20 a year. But I just think, you know, it's like if you don't get scooped up in that first wave of free agency, the money kind of dries up.
Right.
And it's like how many teams could really have offered him more than the mid-level, like the full mid-level, which, you know, was like with 12, 13, somewhere in there. And you know, you got to think Charlotte probably put out like, you know, we're going to match everything, or at least up to a certain point, certainly up to what they paid him. And there just wasn't a market for him, which it was definitely surprising because, you know, just talking about him, like, man, he's a really nice, valuable player. He's a guy that any team would want to have. Like, we've seen the value of these players. And like, when we talk about this sort of mold, like he's probably on the high end in terms of shooting, and he's young. He just turned 25. Very nice player. So this is a great get for Charlotte. Like, I don't remember if you mentioned, but like, in addition to just the incentive structure of the deal, like it's a descending deal too, right? Like it's front loaded as far as I understand, where he's going to end up in the third year. He's at like 14 and a half, something like that. So it's a great deal for Charlotte. I mean, it's going to be a very tradable contract if they want to go that route. And just at face value, like I would say it's a little below value for him. But yeah, on the other hand, like you were saying, like you gotta just, you know, you gotta understand where he's coming from, and anything can happen. You know, you could get injured in that 1 year. You could have like the Nerlens Noel situation. So you can't blame him for just taking the guaranteed money. It's a lot of money. And like you said, he'll be 28 at the end of this deal. He can, you know, he'll still be in his prime. Kind of a win-win. I would definitely say it's a little more team friendly. On that side, a little bit. Yeah. If you're a Hornets fan, you're happy.
And I mean, I'm happy myself, man, because he's on my dynasty team in fantasy. And
there you go.
I would go and look at my team, and I wouldn't see a team name next to him, and I'm just like, all right, what's going on here? Like, you know, what's the deal? Is he going to sign a minimum somewhere? Like, you know, is he going to be stuck behind a bunch of forwards and see his playing time diminish? So, you know, I was sweating a little bit, but I mean, obviously it worked out for him. And the restricted free agency tab next to his name, I think that also contributed as to why it was a huge contributor in the fact that he was on the market for so long. You mentioned that money dries up the longer we go in. And I'm sure teams are not going into free agency looking at the restricted free agents as primary targets. Because if you make an offer, your money is tied up. It used to be 3 days. With the new CBA, I think it's going to be cut down to 1. I'm not sure if it's down to 1 now or it's going to be later, but it's either 1 or 2 days your money is tied up in the player. That's a huge disadvantage if you're trying to go after
that first week or whatever of free agency. Yeah, you can't 2-3 days, whatever it is. Like that's definitely if you fully expect, you know, his team to match, then it's like it's kind of like the Austin Reeves, right? Like It's like, why
Mhm.
didn't anybody, throw an offer sheet at Austin Reeves? And it's like, because the Lakers were just going to match everything, and they just probably didn't think it was
Yeah.
worth it to have their money tied up for a couple days.
Yeah, so that's probably what it was. It kind of started him on the path towards being a free agent for a little bit longer. And then from there, it was probably that back and forth over details. It was probably like, okay, how many years? I want 4. We want to do 2. Maybe we meet in the middle. What do the incentives look like over time? Is it going to be flat? Is it going to be descending? There are a lot of details they probably had to work out. But in the end, it definitely worked out for both sides. So you look at Charlotte now as a whole, their front line looks pretty solid. You have PJ Washington. You look at Nick Richards. You look at those. You look at Mark Williams, who they just drafted last year, looking really solid after rookie season. And then Miles Bridges, of course, back on board for 1 year. So you look at the 4-5, looks pretty solid. They have depth there. They have some young talent. So even though the team itself still has some holes to figure out, the front line looks pretty solid. And I like the fact that he's going to be there. He's versatile. He's working with Brandon Miller. He's working with Melo. He's got a great rim protector next to him, so he can display a little bit more of that ability to be versatile in the perimeter and have that back line behind him. And then, of course, he can play small ball 5. He did have some small ball 5 there and here and there during the season. And I mean, looking at his last 19 games or so of last season, so between February 8th and March 31st, I mean, he was at about 18 points a game, 47% from the field, 37% from 3, with about 6 boards. And he had a 42-point game in that span as well. Actually, 43 points. You look at his potential, you look at his talent level, it's there. So it's just about how he's going to fit in with those other guys. I think it should be pretty smooth. And then just seeing where everybody goes from here. It's another developmental year, but I think everybody's going to be on the same page, and everybody can take a step forward now that he's on board and they can focus on the task at hand for next season.